Consider supporting Archaeosoup on Patreon for as little as $1 per month. Link available in the video description. Thank you.
Hello and welcome back to another Aspects of Archaeology. Today we're going to be examining some more unsung heroes of the archaeological world and taking a closer look at conservation. Decay is a force which biases the archaeological record by removing all but the most durable parts of archaeology. Organic materials rot and metals rust, and in our bodies, usually all but the bones disappear entirely. This means that some of the most important details of ancient objects can be lost forever, biasing what we see today. A museum, for example, typically only displays the most durable parts of an ancient culture. This can lead to a skewed idea of what life was like in the past. Take a look at the world around you, and you'll quickly notice that the most interesting aspects of your culture are the least durable ones. And rare finds such as Ötzi the Iceman confirm that the same applies to cultures in the past. He's so interesting because he's well preserved, along with various objects which usually aren't. This is where the field of conservation shines, helping archaeologists to preserve the most delicate of finds and bringing objects back from the brink of destruction. So, archaeology is usually only made up of the most durable parts of the past. If anything less durable is found, it's usually worth the consideration and attention of a conservator. Imagine you're happily digging on site, and then you come across a rare and delicate find. This is when it's a good idea to call upon the expertise of a conservation specialist. Conservation begins on site by ensuring a stable environment for the find. This will include protecting it from the weather, shoring it up, and ensuring no additional physical damage is made to the object. It is likely then to be carefully removed from its context and taken back to a laboratory. Sometimes an entire context itself will be removed if the object is too delicate. The artifact or context will be carefully packaged and handled for transportation, and once back at the laboratory, a plan of action will be devised based upon the material of the object itself. For example, if a cache of metallic objects are recovered, it is likely that the following will take place. The metal may be cleaned to remove mud and then very carefully dried. It will then be stored in a dry environment to ensure no further corrosion occurs. Silica gel beads are an excellent way of removing moisture from the environment, say within a box. This relative humidity is carefully monitored using an indicator strip, and the threshold carefully controlled depending upon the metal being stored. In the case of metal such as lead, say a Roman lead pipe, there are additional considerations. It should be kept away from degrading plastic and cardboard, as this can encourage corrosion on the metal. Also, it must be remembered that lead is very heavy, and adequate storage in terms of support is needed. When it comes to preserving organics such as wood, leather and textiles, there are other procedures. Firstly, such objects are usually only recovered in the UK from waterlogged sites. Such materials must be kept from drying out, stored in a wet polythene bag below 5 degrees Celsius, in a dark fridge, and possibly with a biocide to discourage microbial growth. With wood, this is particularly important as its structure is likely to have changed. Through the process of hydrolysis, the contents of its cells are literally replaced by water. Dry it out and it will crumble. However, gradual exposure to a substance such as polyethylene glycol can slowly replace the water, bulking up the structure of the wood. This technique has been used to great effect on the famous remains of King Henry VIII's warship, the Mary Rose, in Portsmouth. The care of inorganic materials such as glass, ceramic and stone is usually straightforward. It can usually be washed and marked on site with very little effect upon the object. This is one of the reasons why people often get to do this when they volunteer on an archaeological excavation. And the reconstruction of artifacts is usually quite straightforward, a bit like a jigsaw. However, there are instances, particularly with glass, where very careful attention is required. Sometimes a micro-excavation may be required, with delicate reconstruction work, specialist materials and resins. Occasionally, the material itself, the glass, may be inherently unstable. This often depends upon the quality of the glass, the balance of the constituent materials, or even the skill of the person who has made the object in question. It simply may not be up to scratch. In these instances, there are various ways of dealing with the chemical instability of poor quality glass. But in all of these examples, proper storage is key, for example, wrapping objects only in acid-free tissue paper. It is also worthwhile mentioning that sometimes conservators discover an object from within using techniques such as X-rays. In seeking to understand how best to conserve an object, such investigations frequently reveal crucial details which are simply invisible to the naked eye. Here are some superb examples of archaeological conservation at work. In 1987, in southwest Wales, in the town of Carmarthen, archaeologists were unearthing a medieval friary. The 13th and 14th century Grey Friars Friary seemed to be a fairly standard excavation, until one day they found an important object, a secular window in stained glass, covered in heraldic designs. It appeared that the window had fallen into the building itself and was almost intact, although unfortunately the environment was less than ideal for the preservation of glass. Rather than fractured pieces of glass as you might expect, they resembled a more jelly-like consistency. Conservators were called in, and the fragile find was held together on site with an acrylic colloidal dispersion. This allowed it to be lifted and taken back to Cardiff, where it was further consolidated and cleaned. And thanks to this painstaking work, the design of the window was revealed. At the far end of Hadrian's Wall, the opposite end to which Archaeosoup Towers is based, is the city of Carlisle. It was here in 2001 that some archaeologists on a fairly standard Roman excavation made a fairly standard discovery, some rusted bits of waste iron. This less than inspiring object was submitted for X-ray analysis to see what lay beneath the plumes of rust. The X-rays revealed iron-scaled armour held together by intricate bronze wires. This was a near-unique object and a true prestige item in its day. Such a find is investigative conservation at its very best. Finally, we travel to the famous waterlogged site of Coppergate in York, in the north of England. From 1976 to 1981, archaeologists here uncovered an incredibly well-preserved Viking Age street. Wooden bowls and spoons were found in the homes along the street, along with leather sheaths for knives and other leather goods, including extremely well-preserved shoes. The waterlogged conditions had preserved them. Indeed, they even found a Viking Age sock. All of these objects were found within the preserved remains of wood-lined basements, the very homes that these people lived in. And none of these remains would have survived long out of the ground were it not for conservators working diligently to preserve them. So, there you have it. Archaeological conservation and conservators are some of the most unsung heroes of the archaeological world. Yet, were it not for their efforts, some of our most prized artefacts and interesting ideas may be lost forever. Not only do they conserve and preserve the things which are most delicate in archaeology, but they also add value and knowledge to them by investigating deeper into the very mechanics and sometimes into the very fabric of the artifacts themselves. Conservators are most certainly unsung and heroes. So there you go, conservation. Hopefully you found this video interesting and or useful. If you have, please feel free to subscribe by pushing the button above. Alternatively, you can find us on Facebook to search for Archaeosoup Productions and click like, and various news stories and the like which don't make it onto the YouTube channel turn up there instead. We're also on Twitter, just look for Archaeosoup, soup spelt with a 0, and also check out archaeosoup.com for all things Archaeosoup. So there you go, guys. Thanks very much for watching, and until next time, bye-bye.
Works it out. We've got ours here. There was a